was 100 million. I'll start there.
Right.
But it's a whole bunch of white churches that do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think I think this is powerful because
how much money do you think Charles Stanley made?
Definitely a lot. The whole Stanley family, they undeniably they're good. Yeah. So, but I think like
let's not run by that. No, I'm serious. Think on record, important. Charles Stanley was an amazing teacher.
Yeah.
Amazing man of God, amazing leader. And there's no discussion about how much money he makes, where he lives, what the estate is worth, or that the Stanleys were the largest distributors of Amway in the country, and they did it under the ministry. So nobody talks about the Stanley headquarters that is more than 2 blocks off the highway. Come on now. Yeah. But how many stories about what Jake's drive?
Yep.
Where Jake's live. Come on now. The inequity. We're going back to it. I know you're trying to run from this racism thing, but the inequity of the racism in America sees itself over and over and over again. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not in any way thrown off. I have no idea how much money Jensen Franklin makes. It's not on my mind. And I'm not saying he's done anything illegal or immoral. I'm saying to you, it's not a conversation. I'm saying to you, it is always a conversation in blackface.
It is unstable. Like, it's some mystery how things got so bad. Let me break the silence for you. The U.S. invaded Haiti in 1915. They took the banks, rewrote their constitution, murdered protesters, and stayed for nearly 20 years. And if you didn't know that, that's by design. By the early 1900s, Haiti had already repaid that independence debt. You remember the one France forced on them? I covered this in a previous video, but yeah. France forced Haiti to pay reparations for freeing themselves. But now, American banks wanted a cut. The U.S. was worried about instability, but what they meant was business instability. So when Haiti's president, Villebrun Guillaume Sam, was killed in a revolt, President Woodrow Wilson sent in the Marines, not to protect the Haitian people, but to protect U.S. assets. They landed in Port-au-Prince in 1915, and they didn't leave until 1934. Once there, the U.S. military took control of Haiti's customs houses, their treasury, and the National Bank. Then they rewrote Haiti's constitution, specifically to allow foreigners to own land. Sound familiar? They dissolved parliament, censored the press, and re-established forced labor. Thousands of Haitians were rounded up to build roads. And when they resisted, the Marines opened fire. In 1919, they massacred over 2,000 Haitians in a single campaign. And the records called it a pacification. What? The U.S. never gave that land back. They built their economies, their banks, their sugar companies, all on Haitian soil. And when the occupation finally ended in 1934, they left behind a puppet military and an economy designed to funnel wealth out. Not a single Haitian citizen got reparation. Not a single American official was held accountable. But here, we're taught to see Haiti as broken, right? As if it just happened. Haiti was the first Black republic in the world. The first to overthrow slavery and colonizers. So you tell me why the U.S. and Europe spent the next century trying to punish them into poverty. The U.S. didn't just influence Haiti. It occupied it, extracted from it, and erased the receipts. So the next time somebody blames Haiti for their own suffering, ask them, what do you really know about the people that pulled the strings?
Time flies. Already 11 minutes into this live. 11 minutes into this live, just trying to give people an opportunity to come on in. It is the holiday weekend. So possibly there's still celebration going on. And I'm trying to go back and forth between Facebook and YouTube, because on last week, I noticed a lot of people were responding through Facebook. I saw my pastor on here. Blessings to you. Good evening, Pastor Kennedy. Thank you for coming on, joining the discussion. So It took a minute last week, but this is beyond last week's minute. But I'm not going to belabor the time. You saw that we are discussing 250 years here in this country. 250 years of, well, not here in this country, but 250 years of America. And we're asking the question tonight, what does freedom mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? So I'm seeing others peeking in. Um, welcome tonight. Let us know who you are and where you're from. Say good night. I hope everyone has had a wonderful uh, fourth weekend. Well, we're still in the weekend. So I hope that you had a wonderful time with your family, your loved ones, your friends. Uh, this was something that I was going to do on Friday evening, but um, hey, we're here. And it may have been a good idea because the one thing I did not want to do, I didn't want to come across as someone who is trying to rain on uh, anyone's parade, right? As the saying goes, try to make you feel a way because you are observing in some way this Independence Day weekend, something that we have all done, many of us throughout our lives, especially when we were younger, because we could not wait to see the fireworks, right? We couldn't wait to see the fireworks. So I wasn't trying to do that, but I just realized that with a nation that is celebrating 250 years, it is important to discuss our thoughts. And I wanted to gauge our minds on what we think and how we're feeling at this time. As you saw in my thumbnail, it was in full regalia, full red, black, and green. The Pan Africanism colors established over a century ago, representing the unification of our people all over the diaspora. So you saw that. You saw how I was dressed. And of course, I'm sure it was an attention getter, but at the same time, I'm not coming from the angle of any sort of nationalist or black power uh, movement person, although I believe in my own way that some of the ideas have their own place. Others are coming in. If you are on YouTube, please let me know. I hope it works this week. Last week I couldn't see anyone in the chat. I know a lot of people come through on Facebook. I just want to give a little more time. We're still new to this streaming thing, and I do understand through observing others that sometimes it takes a minute, it takes a little while for people to come on in. But I don't want to um, hold us up too long. So I hope everything is well. I hope everything is well with each of you. Okay, so the question posed is, what does freedom mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? It's not meant to be a lecture. I'm really hoping for input, but I'll just go ahead and move on anyway, and hopefully we can get some feedback along the way. What does freedom mean to you, right? Because when we hear the word freedom, right, freedom, it means different things to different people, right? Different things may even come to mind. When people think freedom, they're thinking in from a political angle. Others are very focused, especially these days, on financial freedom, right? Financial literacy and financial freedom is very important, especially in our community. Sorry. Some think about freedom, some of the basic or the fundamentals of the freedoms that we are to have or given in this nation, right? Freedom of speech, um, freedom of religion, which is the ability to worship, and something that someone may have not thought about or may have heard spoken of too often, but yes, movement. Movement is a freedom. Having the ability to be mobile, to move about from through state lines, right? To pursue opportunities in order to better yourself. In order to better yourself, that's a freedom, right? That's what freedom is. Okay. And so the ability to make a choice for ourselves is also a freedom, a choice for ourselves, a choice for our families having autonomy, right? Existing as an individual who is able to live free from free from great interference, some would say, or restraints from the government. Now, of course, when it comes to the subject of crime, we need we need things in place for that. But we're talking about people that are in the pursuit of life and happiness. I'm told that originally that it didn't say the pursuit of life and happiness, but the pursuit of life and property, right? Because ownership is very important, even to this day. Ownership is very important. So all of these things matter, and all of these things are part of our freedom. But on tonight, we want to go a little further than that, because freedom that has been declared, the freedom that has been declared, and freedom being experienced to its full ideal, have not always happened, right, at the same time. It has not always happened at the same time. Here in what we generally know as America, okay, these United States of America, corporate states of America. In the beginning, we learned, many of us in school, about these founding documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and all of these things that speak about liberty, that speak about our rights and our freedoms. And the Constitution is what's been put in place in order to protect things like I just mentioned: the freedom of speech and of religion, the freedom of assembly, right? To assemble together peacefully. I want us to really, especially as a community of people, to really, really pay attention to certain key words, and to understand that whenever we assemble in a way that appears to be a mob, they're going to feel that way anyway. Okay. Um, and we're behaving in ways that will uh, merit law enforcement agents to ascend upon us for whatever reason we're gathering. There is some justification of it, but in a lot of cases it's not, because we've seen people come together, assemble and do things the right way, even if they've gotten permits and made announcements and saw their local council people, and still they were um, agitated. They still were treated in a way that was not just. And so these are the freedoms that need to be protected. okay, need to be protected. And so the question, what does freedom mean to you? I'm still not seeing anyone. Maybe I need to switch over to, all right. So the question that we're asking, are these freedoms available equally to everyone, right? As independence. And I don't want to give a history lesson. I would that anyone who needs to freshen up will go ahead and Google the whole thing behind independence, right? A group of individuals or um, a collective of individuals who had come over here to what was a land that was new to them, all right? And they wanted freedoms from the crown. They wanted freedoms from their British uh, government or kingdom at the time. Okay, but are these freedoms available equally to everyone? That is the question on tonight. And I'm not saying this, I'm not here once again to attack America, right? I know that, there are times we have our grievances, and a lot of us, wish for opportunity and resources to pick up and go somewhere else, and all of those things like that. But I'm not here to attack the country, right? Because this is where I was born. This is where my parents were born. My grandparents were born. Their parents were born. I have document that goes back not as far as I would desire, but far back enough to let me know that yes, my lineage has been here for a long time. I am part of that group who these days distinguish themselves as foundational Black Americans, if you would, foundational Black Americans, right? And that has everything to do with the fact that our forebearers, uh, they were here during the time of this nation being developed. And unfortunately, through the institution of chattel slavery, all right? So anyway, but as a people here in America, and especially those that are Black men, Black women, Black men, right? When I look at the question of freedom, I also have to look through the lens of history. I can't skip over that, right? We can't skip over that. Um, After emancipation, after Lincoln signed the document that outlawed slavery all over the nation, excuse me, interruptions. hmm Um, slavery had legally ended, right? It legally ended, but the question became, now what do we do? Okay, what do you do when you're given uh, freedom physically, but you don't have the resources? You don't have what it takes to really go out into this place that, although you may have been here for quite some time in all of your life, you were born here, you you know, uh, but your movement, once again, your movement was limited. So you really don't know where you are outside of the plantation or the system of plantations that many enslaved individuals were permitted uh, by way of a special note to go to when they were running errands for those who owned them. Where are you going to go, right? People were no longer legally owned, but were but they were not really free, right? They were not really free because once again, uh, they didn't have the means to even begin to move, to have mobility, and to make moves, right? They still didn't have the rights and privileges to vote on policy, okay? Many of them did find a way to learn, to read, to write, right? To learn arithmetic. But as far as getting a formal education, for quite some time, they could not do that. So it was not, they were not put in a place where they could build wealth. And definitely um, when it comes to the issue of being able to protect their families, they wouldn't be able to do that effectively. The men, right, wouldn't be able to do that effectively because they did not have, as their white counterparts did, the right to bear arms, right? They didn't always have weapons or sufficient weaponry, okay? And so those were battles within themselves to be fought, and they did, and they were fought, okay? Because what we have to understand about freedom, is that freedom is not only about what we are delivered from. Okay, it's not just about what we're delivered from, but freedom is also about what we have the ability to walk into. What we have the ability to walk into. I'm not going to make this a Bible study session, but I can't help but to think on the accounts that we see in the Old Testament concerning the ancient Israelites who were delivered out of Egypt, okay, and they were being brought into a new land, although we know, those of us who know the Bible knows that how the story goes. Many of them didn't get to go into their promised land. Many did, many did not. But the point that I want to make is that the one who delivered them, okay, which is the Lord God himself, Moses was just the instrument, although he is given the title as a deliverer, but he was just the instrument. But we see when you read those scriptures in the book of Exodus, even God did not permit that his people would be free without leaving with resources. And there were situations that happened that finally brought Pharaoh and the people of Egypt to the place of not only wanting the ancient Israelites to get out and in a hurry, but they were so broken down by the power of God that they were ready to give them whatever they wanted. They were able to receive what we hear about today, if you allow me to put it this way, and what's being cried out for, especially by that subgroup of individuals who consider themselves FBA, reparations. Okay, they were able to get reparations. They were able to be supplied with finances, with clothing, with whatever they needed, and the instruction was for them to not be shy about what they were asking for. Get everything that they can get and carry, and that even though, as you may hear a preacher say, they didn't have anywhere to spend it. Okay, but their time in the wilderness was just a not yet moment. It was a not yet, right? They didn't have anywhere to spend it yet, but these resources were important, especially because of the fact that they were not just going to be a people who were physically free, but according to the plan of God, they were going to become, according to the promise he made to Abraham, they were going to be a nation, right? A nation. A nation needs several things. Even a nation, when they got into the wilderness, they had the wealth. It is important for a nation to have a treasury. While they were in the wilderness, the Most High God met with Moses, and he gave them uh, commandments. He gave them a covenant, right? A constitution, a means of how they should live their lives. By the time Moses goes off the scene, we we are introduced. We had been introduced to Joshua, but now we see that Joshua is a warrior leader. A nation needs a defense department. Okay. I wish I really had time to really build on all of that, but I hope you're catching what I'm saying. To operate as a nation, certain things need to be in place, and resources is one of them, because it's not about just getting away from somewhere, but it's about being prepared to be able to walk into our new place. Okay, so one of the things that I was researching um, and refreshing myself on is the laws and the systems that existed even after slavery. Okay, things like vagrancy laws, where people who did not have employment or any recognized means of support could actually be penalized. And most of the time, the penalty for not having uh, employment or having your own uh, means of support meant going back, okay, going back to the very plantation that you were just freed from, or somewhere else, right? And you were going to uh, have cheap labor, right? It's going to be cheap labor, okay? And so that's something that has not left, okay? That is something that has not left. It's still here in different forms, but when you learn how to recognize it, when you learn how to recognize it, you'll know what you are looking at. Okay, so we have to learn. We have to learn to not only know what we're looking at, but to get all the knowledge that we can. Right? There's no more excuse. There's no more excuse. There's many things that we can still uh, bring forth our petitions, and we can make our complaints justifiably about, but ultimately there is no more excuses. Okay, um, the laws that restricted education, you know, back then, it was because the people in power understood that once you get knowledge, and not just get the knowledge, but you get the understanding of how to properly apply that knowledge, it's going to produce power, right? And so if they were able to control what the people knew, then they can limit what the person believed was possible for them to have. But you know, even before I get to the having, I think it's very important for us to understand the importance of having a proper perspective of who we are, and having an identity. Having an identity. Peace, Tanya. I see you popped in. Peace to you, right? And having an identity. right? Throughout my life here on the earth, um, I've heard different descriptions when it came to our people. Okay, of course, historically and seeing in history classes, because this wasn't something that I heard a lot when I was younger, unless somebody was just being facetious, and that is the word Negro. You know, they call you a Negro. We know that the other N word has been around. Bless you, been around. But of course, I was born in the era, where people were black, black and proud. So very familiar with being called black, familiar with understanding that I'm a person of African descent. Okay. And now we have here the usage of African American, which there are people who feel that that's such a broad term. And so, once again, as I was talking about it earlier, those that feel that because their lineage is connected to this land, they consider themselves to be FBA or foundational Black Americans, right? And so the deeper question underneath all of these descriptions is, who are we? Who are we? Right? Because when we lose connection to our story, right? Not his story, but when we lose connection to our story, okay, then we'll lose connection to our purpose, okay? And this is where we have to really consider the voices that are giving the narrative of our history, right? Voices who are giving the narrative of our history. It's important for us to do our own due diligence and to go beyond what the institutions of education has offered us. There is so much more uh, to learn when it comes to these identities. Something that's coming to mind right now is like a decade ago when I was going through a personal journey of I won't call it finding myself. That's to be some people say I'm going to find I don't believe I was finding myself, but I was learning more about myself, and I went on a journey that took me. The journey took me through a route that was more connected to, um, our heritage, our ancestry, things like that, our African past, and so forth and so on. So when you see the name Kwabena, it's not something I just pulled out of a hat somewhere. It actually it has connection to my very composition and my makeup. And it also helped me to be able to identify. Once I really begin to identify some things, it helped me to be able to identify those areas that I have to keep an eye on, right? That I have to continue to be disciplined in, right? But ultimately, thank God, those areas are not as many as the areas that's considered to be more favorable or positive. Okay. So once you get an identity, even though after the time when my mother transitioned, um, I actually took time to start doing some studies, some linguistic studies and things like that. When it came to my name, Tahith Mansan, it's a name that, it's a running joke in my home, among my brothers anyway, that it took about 3 weeks to a month before I got a name. And finally, when I did get a name, it was from my late godmother, Teresa Prince, bless her memory, that named me Tai Hithman Son. And so it was many years after, and after my mother had transitioned, that I began to do some research and study and really to find out, um, what that meant. And I'm not sure why that all of a sudden became a mission of mine. but it did. And I invested, my time, and it took a few dollars, right? But um, it was helpful. It was helpful because it helped me to understand that though that seems to have been the name that just came out of nowhere, nobody ever heard it. Where does that come from? Even to this day, people question it. But after learning the meaning, after learning, getting the breakdown, I can see all the characteristics within myself. I had a poster made up some years ago before the pandemic, and I had it in my room. But with so much moving I've done, it's gotten lost. But whenever people would see that poster, they would actually, say, you know what, wow, that's you. That's you. I even had Humbert there. I had Humbert there, and even the breakdown of that, although it may be considered the surname of you know, our former masters. Okay. But it still had its meaning. So what's in the name? A lot is in the name. So that was kind of a sidebar a little bit, but at the same time, no, because we're talking about identity, and it's important for us to get to know once again who we are. When we speak of revival, we can speak of it in a spiritual sense, but I believe also that among our community, our people, revival of our identity is going to be very foundational to us really seeing the freedoms that we desire to see. I'm not going to stay any longer. Let me just share with you that there are three men. Now, they may not be your three guys, but they're my three guys. Okay, right? And those three guys in this order are Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. Malcolm X. These three men, right? When I begin to feel when I begin to feel some lack in confidence, when I begin to feel lack in, I don't want to say importance because that's not something that I really worry about. As a black male in this union, these have been my three go-to guys for a long time, right? Marcus Garvey, not going to give a big old background of him, but Marcus Garvey, we see that when you learn of him, you can see that uh, through his UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, right? There was an emphasis on identity, what I just finished speaking about, as well as ownership and our people building for ourselves, right? His message, and I had a powerful poem of his. I did many years when I first started doing episodes of what I call TWNT radio. It was a powerful poem or a speech that he had called "Man, Know Thyself," right? So he was strong on our people knowing ourselves, okay? Discovering our creative abilities. Okay, we serve a God who is creator, and he's made us to be small c creators, right? Discover our creative abilities and use those abilities not only to serve a good purpose in one another's life, but to build business, right? To understand our value. Dr. King emphasized justice. Okay, he emphasized justice. He emphasized moral responsibility. Okay, moral responsibility. But he also emphasized love, and many people had a problem with that, and even to this day, they have a problem with his message of love, which really they have a problem with Jesus's message of love, because that's Jesus's teachings on love were the found is are the foundation. His teachings is the foundation of what Dr. King was talking about. You know, loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, praying for your enemies. I know that that's a tough one to swallow. But what I learned when I took the time to research Dr. King's speeches and his sermons and read them carefully, you know, just simple. I got this simple understanding, right? A simple understanding that when we speak of love, we have to rid ourselves of the romantic idea of what love is. We have to rid ourselves of the romantic and the emotional idea of what love is, and really know that love is not about how we feel, right? We're not talking about that type of love, right? We're talking about the God kind of love that's not about how we feel, right? But it's an action word where we're moving in righteousness, right? And fairness towards our fellow person in spite of themselves. And so, once again, that's a hard thing because we have to first get over ourselves, and we have to get over a lot of the things that, um, you know, have been embedded in us through just our, you know, society and our social connections and what has become the norm. Selfishness is the norm of this world. That's why God, being love and teaching love through the master, it's such a hard thing for people because it's all about self. Now, we'll do for people that we feel a certain way towards, but if we're not feeling you, even if you're my family member, if I'm not feeling you, I'm not doing anything good towards you, and that's not the way, right? And so Dr. King, he taught this love to first get practice the discipline of separating our feelings from this word and understanding it from the perspective of, I would say, what Paul presented to us in chapter First Corinthians chapter 13. He talked about how love is patient, love is kind. All right, we need help right now. Love does not keep record of the wrongs done to it. You know, love sees the best in people, you know, things like that, right? We got to get beyond, and it's a process. It's a process, but this is what he's talking about, and he was big on that. And so we know that also Dr. King challenged America, but he also challenged all of humanity not to allow hatred to destroy our character. Don't allow hatred. Once we allow, you know, our anger to linger and to fester, it becomes bitterness, it becomes hatred. And where there is hatred, you're really not free. You're not free. I wonder if you ever heard, I wonder if you heard someone say that forgiveness is not really for you. I mean, for the other person, sorry. Forgiveness is for you. Okay. Forgiveness is for you. It's to free yourself. Okay. And I learned this lesson very well multiple times. Okay. Because we can't change anyone. So we're not trying to change, even when it comes to this message, you know, of this journey of freedom and being equal in this land. You know, we have to understand that we cannot change people. Okay. Legislation has helped. Okay. But we can see that even when it comes to that, depending on who's sitting in seats of power, legislation can be challenged. It can be, you know, pretty much overturned and things like that. Um, and to my point of movement earlier, you know, even when it comes to picking up and moving to another state, and you know you're infatuated with a certain place that you went to visit while you're on vacation, I tell people it's very important, especially today, that before you pick up and go anywhere, to educate yourself, right? Not just on the streets and boulevards and where the malls are, but what are the laws? What are the state laws, right? What does the state constitution say? A lot of people don't understand that. You know, that's always the question. How are we the United States? And you have all these different states with their own laws, their own constitution. Learn them. Learn them. T.C. Martin, don't know if she's still on the line, but peace and love to you. Good night. I hope you had a wonderful, having a wonderful weekend. Okay, right. So that was Dr. King, and now it brings us to Brother Malcolm, Brother Malcolm X. I know a lot of people knew him and can only remember him for his fiery speeches and rhetoric, as he was a very powerful and charismatic and influential representative of the nation of Islam, right? But you have to understand he had to change. Peace, cuz. What's going on, Ralph? Listen, man, good to see you. Good to see you on the line. Yeah, I got family on the line. But the bottom line was this, especially after he made his trip to Mecca, right? And we all know that we're not all of the same religious persuasion, the same faith, right? But after he made his journey to Mecca, he had a change. And we know the story about, he was already in trouble with the nation, but I'm not here to deal with that. As a matter of fact, being that I'm in that lane, I send my prayers to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who just lost his wife of 72 years, Mother Khadijah, from this life. And so we keep him in our prayers, right? So yes, so Malcolm recognized some things, or he emphasized, he had his emphasis. His emphasis was that on dignity. It was on self-respect. Not much different than the other gentlemen, right? Of course, knowledge of self, and yes, even accountability. Okay, and so he challenged people not to accept an identity of inferiority. Okay, we are not less than. The late Jesse Jackson used to say at his big rallies and have the people repeat after him, I am somebody, right? I am somebody. I am somebody, and you are somebody. And I dare you. I dare you. I don't know. I don't believe in doing things just to be doing them. But if I feel a need or led to do so, I would love to walk you through some things in the Bible. Yes, that Bible that people like to call the white man's religion. Okay. You know what I mean? Learn the difference. Right? But the scriptures reveal that we are somebody. Sandra Martin, bless you. Peace and love to you. All right. Thanks for jumping in. I'm gonna have to go. Who did I cover? I covered Garvey. I covered Martin. I'm on Malcolm, right? I missed my point, but this is the whole thing here. Yes, we are somebody. Identity, right? We don't have to behave like we're inferior to anyone. We don't walk around in pride, but we must know who we are, right? We have to know who we are. And it doesn't matter. And I've had conversations in the past with individuals that I was acquainted with. And closely acquainted with, and who may be from other countries, or their parents are from other places. Not all skin folk, right, are kinfolk. Just because we are all melanated, we don't all have that same attitude of unity, and of being a people that, of course, are separated by various cultures, but are descended from the same place of origin. Okay. And so, yes, we don't have to feel inferior or try to make anyone else feel inferior. Okay. So we have different voices, we had different approaches from our leaders throughout the time, but the central idea and the goal was pretty much the same, right? Was pretty much the same. And so, as I get ready to close tonight, because I've been talking for a minute, and I'm happy to see those that have chimed in, and those of you who may check in and look at the replay later and hang out there, you're still able to go ahead and put your comment in. Even after this live stream is over, you can add your comments. Let me know you were here. But ultimately, we're here at 250 years celebrated in this country. In my bedroom, I have one of the best views. And so all week long, I've been getting great light shows. And I'm sure tonight is quiet now, but the people in this community, they never fail. All year long, they're busting fireworks. They're busting fireworks. So anyhow, as I said, we're not here to rain on anyone's parade. We're here. We have a right to be here, and we have a right to rise up in an organized fashion in order to become the community of people that we are purposed to be. And I will say this as I'm moving along. We don't have to stop having the conversations of what historically was done to our ancestors and to us. No one else stops their conversations. No one else stay quiet about the ills that their people have suffered. Okay. So we should not have to do it. And I don't encourage us to be quiet about it. But as opposed to only rehearsing the pain, let us move forward and once again be revived as a people who can shine and who are successful. I didn't really want to use that word because that means a lot of things to different people also. But ultimately, I would say that before we can do any building, we have to commit to the healing. We have to commit to the healing. I know once upon a time, especially in the Black community, getting counseling, going to a therapist was taboo. A person will tell you right away that they're not crazy, they don't need that, and things like that. We're in a day now where it's become more acceptable, more normalized, more discreet, right? You can get therapy right through your phone these days, okay? But however it's done, we have to begin the process if we're going to truly live free. Okay, so as you see, I've moved away. See, this wasn't really so much about, trying to get on here and talk about America and all of its ills and the present administration. No, we do that enough, and we've done that enough. Are we ready to get to healing, right? So that we can get back to building. We need healing, okay? What did we see first? The first institution we saw, okay, and those of us who believe in scripture, is that of the union of a man and a woman, okay, marriage. From marriage, there was a family, okay, right? We need healing in our family. We need healing in our relationships, right? Men, we need to grow up. You know, I'm talking like that tonight. You know, we may have been legally grown for a long time, but still have not grown up. Okay, grown up here, grown up, matured. We got to grow up. You know, our women, you know, are in positions that they are in, and I'm not against a lot of that, but a lot of it is by default of what we fail to do at times. And I know that we can go another 17 hours talking about the systemic racism and, you know, and all of that works against us. I understand all of that, but we have the power to begin to change and to do what we need to do. But it's going to start with healing. We need healing in our communities, healing in our own personal lives, healing in our families, healing in our communities. Guess what? It's not going to happen with the masses. It has to happen one small cluster at a time.